welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Rebecca. I'm a writer currently working on my first book, which is a paranormal thriller. And here on my channel, we talk all things bookish, all things writing, all things lifestyle. And I'm so excited to be filming this video today because I'm going to be talking about everything that I've learned while writing this book, and honestly just diving back into the writing process after years of not touching it. We're going to cover everything from how I prepare to write a book to the actual writing process itself, and I'm also going to give you guys a little bit of a tour of my workspace. I personally love seeing other people's workspaces, and so I thought it would be fun to share mine as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the video. So the first thing that I want to talk about is about preparation. When I first started getting back into writing about a year ago, preparation is not something that I really considered. I really just found a vibe and a general sense of the story and came up with a rough outline for myself and then just got into writing. And to a certain extent, that can be fun. That can be the right approach if you're just looking to, I think, flex the muscle of writing and honestly just get yourself comfortable with the process of sitting down and putting words on paper and kind of just getting back into the swing of writing if you've never done it or if you're getting back into it for the first time in a long time. For some background, I got my bachelor's in English with the specialty in professional writing. I took a lot of creative and literary analysis classes during my undergrad, and it informed a lot of the way that I write and kind of what interests me. And so ironically enough, when I was kind of going through my undergrad, I actually didn't want to be a writer because I was super contrarian and everyone was asking me like, oh, so you're gonna be a writer, and I didn't listen. I chose to pursue something else, but now I'm very much so back into the swing of writing and really embracing that kind of creative muscle. One of the things that I've learned is that I was really grateful for the fact that I just kind of jumped into writing. But I think when it comes to tackling a big project like writing a book, there is a level of preparation that you kind of need to go into to make the process as seamless as possible. I think it's really important to remember that the process of writing and the creative process and honestly just project management as a whole is so different for everyone. And so what works for one person might not work for you, but I find these videos really helpful because you can always take away certain nuggets of information that might actually work for you. So the first thing that I would kind of do in terms of preparation is really figure out how much time you can realistically devote to writing. If you're like me and someone who's, I would say, neurodivergent, I would set really big writing goals for myself, and when I couldn't or wouldn't reach them, I would beat myself up so bad. So I've actually very proudly moved past this, and I'm very realistic about the amount of writing that I can get done in a day. I know on a good day, if I pour all my focus into it, I can get anywhere from 1,200 to 1,500 words, and on a really good day, I can get about 2,000 to 2,500. That's my pace right now. I'm also juggling, looking for work and balancing graduate school and being a wife, and you have to be really patient with yourself and give yourself a lot of grace and understand that it's a juggling act. When writing is not your full-time gig, you need to be realistic about the kind of things that you can actually complete. Which brings me to the conversation of like planning versus pantsing. And I have tried both, and I have realized that I'm somewhere in the middle. And what I mean by that is I don't do a chapter by chapter outline of my story. I find that it's really restrictive and it doesn't give me room to play, especially when I'm in those early drafts of a story. So what I like to do is I like to create a beat sheet for myself. I know the things that are supposed to happen in Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and it gives me room to play around with if I'm in the middle of writing a chapter and something pops into my head that I hadn't considered while I was putting together that beat sheet. It gives me the flexibility to go in and adjust without having to change every single chapter, When I was in the middle of finishing my zero draft, I actually created a chapter by chapter outline of how those last few chapters were supposed to go. And it was so tedious because things would change and I'd have to go back to my outline and move things around so I wouldn't forget. And so I find that for me, at this stage in my writing, it is just so much easier for me to work off of a beat sheet that I keep in my Scrivener document that I can reference. And if I need to adjust, it's a lot easier than having to go through and change a whole bunch of details within each individual chapter that I have outlined. So once I have the beat sheet kind of done, I kind of know, you know, my expectations for a writing session, and realistically I can get like an hour and a half to 2 hours of really good writing done on a day. I try to get a really good sense of understanding of what I'm trying to tackle in that writing session. What scene am I crafting? What emotion do I want to come through? And then I try really hard, I think for about 10 to 15 minutes before I even write anything, putting myself in my character's shoes. So for this book, it's just one POV. It's my female main character, and we're kind of working through her story. And so if I'm writing a chapter that's very internalized and we're getting more of this like B-side story and exploring some of that internal conflict, I know I'm going to be focusing a lot less on dialogue and focusing more on introspection. And so how do I want to tackle that? What kind of writing do I want to explore during that kind of chapter? And it just gives me a better sense of how I am going to make the most of the time that I have set aside. Focus. Focus. There you go. The very last thing that I do in preparation of a writing session, and again, this is for all my neurodivergent girlies, gays, theys, anybody, I need to have noise cancellation. So I use I think they're the Bose QC35s. Thank you, Dad, for gifting those to me. They are my favorite headphones ever. They're so comfortable to wear long term. They have excellent noise cancellation, and this is so, if there's any part of my writing process that's high maintenance, it's this. And it's the fact that I have to have a multitude of layered sounds for my scenes. So like I have found recently that like typing ASMR is really good to help me focus, and so I will have a YouTube video open of like typing ASMR. I'll have a second video open of like rainstorms or ambient noises. Like if I can find an ambient video that matches the vibe of the scene that I'm writing, I will do that. And then I will also go into my Spotify and play like a classical playlist. So I have 3 different sounds going at the same time. And I kind of akin it to, if you've watched Stranger Things and you see Elle in that, I think it's like a sensory deprivation tank. Same concept. I deprive myself of these senses so that I can focus on these senses and this sense and just be able to like fully immerse myself in what it is that I'm writing. So when it actually comes to writing the first draft of anything, this is something that I've had to really work on, and it's just letting all of the prose fall out of me. I don't get too technical on like how it sounds like, what it looks like, if it's good or not. I try my damnedest to not edit a single thing until I am kind of at the end. And so my process with like my zero draft really is, I just told myself the story, and I'm not even like taking that draft and editing it, right? I actually went and I put all of that work into a folder in my Scrivener file and put it separately, and actually started an entirely new project within the project. And so what this allows for me to do is really just kind of start from scratch with some of the ideas that I had when I was making that zero draft. For me, it's a lot easier for me to start with a fresh document, and if there's pieces of the prose from the zero draft that I really want to incorporate, I will just go to that chapter, take the prose and put it in my new file. And because my first draft, when I'm building that first draft, it really is the foundational story that I will be editing moving forward. So my 0 draft is really just like where I come back to like pick the good scraps and put it in this new draft that has a little bit more polish. And for me, that works because when I'm writing the first go around, it's just a process of exploration. It lets me kind of pick and choose the different themes from the genre that I want to incorporate, and then the different themes that I want to explore like with my characters. And so it's just it's like a sandbox to me. That's how I think of it. There's a lot of continuity errors. I throw in, I think I added a dog like halfway through to one of my characters. There's a bunch of little details like that I will just change halfway through, and sometimes I do go back and make small tweaks. I will usually reread the last 200 to 300 words that I've written, maybe tweak a couple things here and there, but that's it. And it's really just to get me back into the mindset of that I was in when I was writing last time. So when I'm going through and I'm reading, if there's a major structural change that I want to make, I will put it in the notes section of kind of my Scrivener document, so that when I'm going back later and editing, I have it and it's in that chapter and I know what I'm supposed to change. The last thing, and I think the thing that people really struggle with the most, is when you get to that writing block, right? Inevitably, it will happen. You'll get to a point where you're just like, I don't know how to get past this. There's 2 pieces of advice that I think I would offer you that have worked really well for me. Number 1, leave it. I used to think you had to write linearly, but sometimes if there's a chapter that I'm getting to and I just don't want to write it, I will leave it and go on to the next chapter. This is where having a beat sheet is helpful, because I know some of the things that are supposed to happen in that chapter, but I don't necessarily have to tackle it right now. The other thing is, you could be setting up the scene completely wrong. I've done that where I try to shoehorn a scene, or I try to start the scene the way that I've always envisioned it in my head, and when it gets time to actually writing it, it just doesn't work. And so you kind of have to step away and be like, why is this not working? Is this not the most interesting place to start it? Where can I actually start this to make this feel a lot more engaging? Because I think the thing you have to remember as a writer is that you kind of have to trust your reader instincts as you're writing. So if it's not interesting for you to read, it's not going to be interesting for anybody else to read. I say that with a grain of salt, because when you're rereading your work over and over and over again, you're gonna get bored of it one way or another. However, I think when you're making those first few drafts and writing that prose for the first few times, I think it's important to keep that in mind. And I think that will really help you kind of overcome some of those obstacles when it comes to your writing. And now we're going to talk about one of my favorite things, which is my workspace. I have worked really hard to get this space to a place where I actually really enjoy sitting here and keep it as minimal as possible. I use a MacBook Pro that's connected to a Samsung M5 monitor. It's 32 inches. It's amazing. It's great for video editing and also great for just writing and working on school stuff. I have a little note from my mom that she gave me with my gift for my birthday, and my Pomodoro timer, which is super duper helpful for my writing sessions or my study sessions. I also have these really nice Govee light bars. I always used to get the RGB light strips, and I just find that the light bars are really nice because I can control them with my phone. And in terms of keyboard, this ergonomic one from Amazon is my favorite. I have a few different keyboards and I always end up going back to this one because it's just so comfortable for my hands. And then I have a little microphone for my voiceovers, which is what you're currently listening to right now. And I hope you guys enjoyed my little desk setup. So that is everything that I wanted to share with you guys. I hope this was helpful. I love hearing more about people's writing processes and how they kind of tackle, working on their projects. If there's anything that I mentioned that you've tried or haven't tried, please leave it in the comments down below. I would love to know more about your writing process, the projects that you're working on. We have such a wonderful community here on the channel, and I love meeting other artists and other creatives, and so I just love hearing what you're working on. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in the next video. Bye!